Imagine standing in one of the driest places on Earth. The sun beats down relentlessly. The ground beneath your feet is cracked and lifeless. Every breath steals moisture from your body. There are no flowing rivers, no lush forests, and almost no sign of life. Then, tucked between the rocks, you notice what looks like a dead plant. Its leaves are curled into a brittle brown ball. Its stems snap at the slightest touch. To anyone passing by, it's simply another victim of the desert. But what if it isn't dead at all? What if it's waiting? Waiting for a single drop of rain. Because the moment water reaches it, something extraordinary begins to happen. The tightly curled branches slowly unfold. Hints of green begin to emerge. Within hours, what appeared completely lifeless seems to come back to life. For centuries, people believed this was a miracle. Some saw divine intervention. Others believed the plant possessed mystical powers. Even today, videos of its transformation leave millions asking the same question. How can something that looks completely dead live again? The answer isn't magic. It's one of the greatest survival strategies evolution has ever created. Today, we're uncovering the remarkable story of the resurrection plant, a survivor that has fascinated explorers, inspired legends, and challenged scientists for generations. Hidden within its fragile leaves are secrets that could even help humanity adapt to a hotter, drier future. Every living thing depends on water. Humans survive only a few days without it. Animals migrate across vast distances searching for it. Plants rely on it to transport nutrients, maintain their structure, and capture sunlight through photosynthesis. Without water, most plants begin to wilt. Their cells lose pressure, their tissues collapse, and eventually the damage becomes irreversible. They die. At least, almost all of them do. Scattered across deserts and rocky landscapes are a handful of extraordinary plants that obey different rules. Instead of fighting drought until they collapse, they simply stop. Growth slows almost to nothing. Their metabolism enters an extremely low state. Leaves curl tightly around delicate tissues, forming what appears to be a dry, lifeless bundle. Then they wait. For weeks. For months. Sometimes even for years. When rain finally returns, they awaken with astonishing speed. This remarkable ability is known as desiccation tolerance. Unlike ordinary drought resistance, which merely slows water loss, desiccation tolerance allows a plant to survive after losing nearly all of the water inside its tissues. That makes these plants exceptionally rare. One of the best-known species is Selaginella lepidophylla, found in the deserts of North America. As it dries, it curls into a compact brown ball that dramatically unfolds after rainfall. Another is Anastatica hyracontica, better known as the True Rose of Jericho, native to the deserts of the Middle East and North Africa. Although they belong to completely different plant families, both evolved the same astonishing solution to one of nature's greatest challenges. They learned how to survive almost complete dehydration. To appreciate how extraordinary that is, imagine removing nearly all the water from your own body. Life would end. Yet these plants routinely endure conditions that destroy nearly every other form of vegetation. Long before science explained how they survived, people created stories to make sense of what they witnessed. Travelers crossing ancient deserts often encountered these strange plants after months without rain. They looked completely dead, their branches tightly curled and brittle beneath the relentless sun. Then came the rains. Almost overnight, the same plants unfolded before their eyes. Without microscopes or biology, there seemed to be only one explanation. They had witnessed resurrection. Across different cultures, these plants became symbols of renewal, endurance, and hope. Some believe they represented life after death. Others carry dried specimens as reminders that even after the harshest seasons, life could return. One of the most famous became known as the Rose of Jericho. According to Christian tradition, It was blessed during the Holy Family's journey through the region and came to symbolize rebirth and renewal. Whether those stories are historically accurate is difficult to know, but their influence was undeniable. For centuries, pilgrims carried dried rows of Jericho plants across Europe and the Middle East. Families kept them inside their homes as symbols of faith, protection, and perseverance. Yet regardless of culture or belief, nearly everyone who encountered these remarkable plants arrived at the same conclusion. If something that appears dead can live again, perhaps hope itself never truly disappears. For people living in deserts, that idea carried profound meaning. Rain might not fall for months. Crops could fail. Entire communities depended on a few precious storms each year. Watching a seemingly lifeless plant awaken after rain wasn't simply fascinating. It reflected their own struggle to survive. Ironically, the resurrection plant isn't performing a miracle. It's solving a problem. How do you survive where water is almost never available? Many desert plants store water. Cacti, for example, develop thick stems that act as reservoirs, while waxy coatings and spines help reduce evaporation. The resurrection plant chose a completely different strategy. Instead of storing water, it learned how to live without it. As drought intensifies, its leaves curl inward, shielding delicate tissues from intense sunlight and trapping tiny pockets of air that reduce heat damage. The familiar green fades to brown as the plant shuts down energy-consuming processes it can no longer sustain. To the outside world, it appears dead. But appearances can be deceptive. Inside, an extraordinary survival system is quietly preserving the machinery of life. Days pass. Weeks pass. Dust storms sweep across the desert. Temperatures soar under the blazing sun before plunging after sunset. Conditions that would destroy most plants become routine. Still, the resurrection plant waits. Its entire existence depends on a simple certainty that has guided it for millions of years. Eventually, the rain will return. That patience has allowed these remarkable plants to survive through countless climate shifts, long before humans built cities or cultivated crops. Today, scientists regard them as some of nature's greatest examples of resilience, not because they are magical, but because they evolved one of the rarest biological abilities on Earth. Yet this raises an even more intriguing question. Drying out normally destroys living cells. So why doesn't it destroy these? How can a plant survive after losing almost every drop of water inside its body? The answer lies deep within its cells, where evolution has engineered a biological defense system so sophisticated that researchers studying agriculture, climate change, and even medicine are now trying to understand its secrets. And once you discover what happens inside those tiny cells, the resurrection plant becomes even more astonishing than the legends ever imagined. To understand why the resurrection plant has inspired myths for thousands of years, we need to look beyond what we can see. Its greatest secret isn't on the surface. It's hidden inside its cells. Every living cell depends on water. Water keeps proteins in their proper shape, supports chemical reactions, transports nutrients, and maintains the delicate membranes that allow life to function. Remove that water, and everything begins to fall apart. Think about a fresh leaf left on a kitchen counter. Within days it becomes limp, dry, and brittle. Inside, millions of cells are collapsing. Proteins lose their structure, membranes become unstable, and energy production grinds to a halt. As dehydration continues, another danger appears. Highly reactive molecules known as reactive oxygen species begin to accumulate. These unstable compounds attack proteins, DNA, and cell membranes, causing damage that most plants can never repair. For nearly every species on Earth, this is the point of no return. Even if rain arrives later, the cells have already been destroyed. So why doesn't the same thing happen to the resurrection plant? The answer is preparation. The plant doesn't wait until it's dying to protect itself. The moment the soil begins to dry, it senses the change and immediately shifts into survival mode. Invisible chemical signals travel throughout its tissues, carrying a simple message. A drought is coming. Prepare. Almost instantly, the plant changes its priorities. Growth slows to a crawl. Producing new leaves is no longer important. Photosynthesis is gradually shut down, conserving energy for a far more urgent task. Protect every living cell. Scientists have discovered that the plant begins producing a remarkable collection of protective molecules, each playing a different role in its survival. One of the most important is a natural sugar called trillulose. To us, sugar is simply food. Inside the resurrection plant, it becomes a shield. As water disappears, trillulose surrounds delicate proteins and cell membranes, helping them maintain their shape instead of collapsing. Imagine removing the support beams from a building. Without reinforcement, the structure would fail. Trillulose acts like invisible scaffolding, holding everything together until water returns. As dehydration becomes more severe, something even more remarkable happens. The sugar forms a microscopic glass-like state inside the cell. Not glass that you could see or touch, but a protective structure that locks biological molecules safely in place. Chemical activity slows almost to a standstill, preserving the cell's vital machinery for however long the drought may last. It's one of nature's closest equivalents to pressing a pause button. But sugar isn't working alone. The resurrection plant also produces specialized molecules known as LEA proteins, short for late embryogenesis abundant proteins. Scientists first discovered these proteins in seeds. Seeds can remain dormant for months, sometimes years, waiting for the right conditions to germinate. LEA proteins help them survive that long period of inactivity. The resurrection plant uses the same strategy. These proteins wrap around sensitive cellular structures like protective blankets, preventing them from collapsing as water disappears. Together with trillulose, they create a powerful defense system capable of surviving conditions that would kill almost any other plant. Meanwhile, another threat begins to emerge. Sunlight. Normally, sunlight powers photosynthesis, allowing plants to convert light into chemical energy. But during extreme drought, sunlight becomes dangerous. Without enough water, the captured energy has nowhere to go. Instead, it produces destructive compounds that can tear cells apart from within. The resurrection plant solves this problem by shutting down much of its photosynthetic machinery before permanent damage can occur. It's like turning off the electricity before a violent storm reaches your home. At the same time, antioxidants spread throughout the plant, neutralizing harmful reactive oxygen species before they can attack the cell's most valuable components. Each defense on its own is impressive. Together, they create one of the most sophisticated survival systems ever discovered in the plant kingdom. By the time the last traces of water disappear, the plant is fully prepared. Its metabolism slows to an almost immeasurable level. Not completely stopped, but so slow that it barely resembles ordinary life. This is where one of the biggest misconceptions surrounding the resurrection plant must be corrected. It doesn't actually die. Despite its lifeless appearance, tiny pockets of biological activity continue deep within its tissues. Essential structures remain intact, quietly waiting for the return of water. The plant isn't coming back from death. It's surviving at the very edge of life. That distinction is more than scientific detail. It's the entire reason revival is possible. If the plant truly died, no amount of rain could restore it. Instead, it enters an extraordinary suspended state that can last for months, and in some species, even years. Then, almost without warning, everything changes. Clouds gather over the desert. The first raindrops strike the dry earth. Water begins soaking into the soil, reaching roots that have waited patiently through months of drought. Within minutes, the resurrection plant starts absorbing moisture. Inside its cells, the transformation begins. The glass-like protective structures dissolve. Proteins unfold back into their working shapes. Cell membranes regain their flexibility. Metabolism accelerates. Energy production resumes, and photosynthesis gradually switches back on. From the outside, the change is just as dramatic. The tightly curled branches slowly begin to unfurl. Brown tissues soften. Green pigments return as chlorophyll is rebuilt. What looked like a dry bundle of twigs gradually becomes a living plant once again. To ancient travelers, it appeared to be a miracle. To modern scientists, it's a masterpiece of evolution. Every stage of this transformation has been refined over millions of years, allowing these remarkable plants to survive where countless others would perish. Yet perhaps the most exciting discovery is not what this plant has already accomplished. It's what it might teach us. As droughts become more frequent and temperatures continue to rise, researchers believe the resurrection plant could hold valuable clues for the future of agriculture. By understanding how it protects its cells and recovers after extreme dehydration, scientists hope to develop crops that can better withstand water shortages without sacrificing productivity. The resurrection plant may never transform wheat into an indestructible desert survivor, but the biological strategies hidden inside its tiny leaves could help create crops that endure longer dry spells, recover more quickly after rainfall, and become better adapted to a changing climate. For a plant that appears lifeless for much of its existence, its influence on the future may only be beginning. In the final chapter, we'll explore how researchers are using these discoveries to tackle one of humanity's greatest challenges, separate scientific fact from centuries of folklore, and uncover why this humble desert survivor has become one of the most important plants in modern research. For centuries, people admired the resurrection plant because they believed it possessed supernatural powers. Today, scientists admire it for a different reason. Not because it performs miracles, but because it has solved a problem that humanity is only beginning to face. Around the world, droughts are becoming more frequent, temperatures are rising, and many regions are experiencing longer periods without reliable rainfall. According to climate researchers, these changing conditions are placing increasing pressure on agriculture, threatening food production for millions of people. For farmers, a single failed rainy season can destroy an entire harvest. Rivers shrink, soils lose moisture more quickly, and crops that have sustained civilizations for thousands of years struggle to survive prolonged drought. Faced with these challenges, researchers have begun asking an extraordinary question. What if nature has already developed some of the solutions we need? The resurrection plant has become one of the most important models for studying extreme drought survival. Scientists aren't trying to turn wheat, rice, or corn into resurrection plants overnight. Evolution shaped these remarkable survivors over millions of years, and no single discovery can instantly recreate that process. Instead, researchers are carefully studying the biological mechanisms that allow these plants to endure extreme dehydration. Surprisingly, many of the genes responsible for protecting the resurrection plant also exist in ordinary crops. The difference is that, in most agricultural plants, those protective systems are weaker or activated too late to prevent serious damage. By understanding how the resurrection plant prepares for drought before its cells begin to fail, scientists hope to improve the natural defenses already present in many food crops. The goal isn't to create plants that can survive years without water. It's to develop crops that remain productive longer during dry periods, recover more quickly after rainfall, and require less irrigation in an increasingly unpredictable climate. That research is still unfolding. There is no miracle crop waiting just around the corner. But each new discovery brings us one step closer to farming systems that are more resilient in a warming world. The resurrection plant has also attracted attention for another reason. For generations, different cultures have used certain resurrection plant species in traditional medicine. Herbal preparations made from these plants have been used in various regions for a wide range of ailments. Modern laboratories have confirmed that some species contain antioxidants and other biologically active compounds that may have interesting properties. But this is where science requires caution. A compound showing promise in a laboratory is not the same as a proven medicine. Many substances can behave differently inside the human body than they do in a petri dish. Before any treatment can be considered safe or effective, it must undergo years of careful testing through clinical research. So while the resurrection plant continues to intrigue medical researchers, there is currently no reliable evidence that it cures diseases or delivers the extraordinary health claims often found online. In many ways, that makes the real story even more fascinating. Science doesn't diminish the wonder of the resurrection plant. It deepens it. The true miracle isn't that this plant possesses magical powers. It's that millions of years of evolution have produced a survival strategy so effective that it still astonishes researchers today. Think about everything this tiny plant endures. Months, sometimes years, without meaningful rain. Blistering heat capable of destroying most vegetation. Dust storms that bury it beneath layers of sand. Extreme temperature swings between scorching days and freezing nights. Yet it doesn't waste energy fighting conditions it cannot control. Instead, it responds with remarkable efficiency. It protects what matters most. It conserves its resources. And then it waits, patiently, until the environment changes. There is a lesson hidden within that strategy. Nature doesn't always survive through strength alone. Very often, survival belongs to those that adapt. Throughout Earth's history, countless species have disappeared because they couldn't adjust to changing environments. Others found new ways to endure. The resurrection plant belongs to that remarkable group. Its story stretches back millions of years, reminding us that survival is rarely about resisting change. More often, it is about responding to it with flexibility, patience, and resilience. The next time you see what appears to be a dry ball of leaves rolling across a desert landscape, it's easy to assume you're looking at something lifeless. But appearances can be deceptive. Inside that fragile shell lies one of nature's most sophisticated survival systems, quietly waiting for the return of something as ordinary and as extraordinary as rain. It reminds us that life can persist through incredible hardship, not because it is indestructible, but because it has learned when to conserve, when to endure, and when to begin again. Perhaps that is why the resurrection plant has inspired awe for so many generations. Not because it truly comes back from the dead, but because it challenges our understanding of what it means to be alive. It teaches us that what appears to be an ending may simply be an interruption. That survival sometimes requires stillness rather than struggle. And that even in the harshest environments on Earth, life can find extraordinary ways to endure. The natural world is filled with stories like this. Ancient trees that have survived for thousands of years. Seeds that awaken after centuries beneath the soil. Tiny organisms capable of living in conditions once thought impossible. Each one reminds us that evolution is not only a story of competition. It is also a story of innovation, of resilience, of endless adaptation. The resurrection plant is one of the finest examples of that story. It doesn't conquer the desert. It doesn't escape it. It simply understands it. And perhaps that's its greatest lesson of all. As our planet continues to change, the answers to some of our biggest challenges may already exist, not in advanced machines or distant laboratories, but in the quiet wisdom of nature itself. If we take the time to observe, to ask questions, and to learn, even the smallest plant can reveal extraordinary truths about survival, adaptation, and the resilience of life. So the next time rain falls after a long dry season, remember the little plant that spent months waiting beneath the desert sun. It wasn't dead. It was preparing for the perfect moment to live again. Until next time, stay curious, because the next great discovery might be growing right beneath your feet.